Oh, Call of Duty. It's not you, it's me. Hey, I'm Sam with Busy Dad Gaming. I help busy dads figure out what games to play on Xbox and PC so they can actually relax and go back to their families recharged. Okay, so today's video is going to be a little more off the cuff, so just kind of be prepared. I'm going to try to not ramble as much as humanly possible, but let's see how this actually goes. I've actually been playing Call of Duty since the original, so this was going back to 2003, I believe it was. With so many games coming out here over the holiday season, it's going to be interesting to see how Call of Duty actually performs. I didn't really enjoy Call of Duty Cold War. It was, overall it ended up being kind of boring, but I'm going to be kind of blunt on this one here. When Call of Duty was leaked and then ultimately confirmed as Vanguard and being in the World War II setting, I wasn't really excited for it. And then after having played the beta, I'm still not overly excited about it. So granted, this was a beta, so I do expect changes to happen. I don't expect that to be the final product per se, but it is going to be pretty close to what we end up seeing at launch. So I originally went into this game with as much as an open mind as humanly possible. You know, I'm not the biggest World War II fan at this point, but alas, I don't think I'm going to be playing this game. But let's take a look as to why. Now I'm gonna go a little bit off the beaten trail here and say that I'm gonna be in the minority when I say that Modern Warfare 2019, I actually did enjoy the campaign. I thought was fantastic. The multiplayer for the most part was pretty good. It was a little on the slower side for most people, which I'm okay with that. It did have its issues, and obviously Warzone ended up coming out of it as well. So it did definitely have, you know, some shining moments. Now, when Cold War came out, I think there was some, for me personally, there was, you know, obviously we're going, you know, almost 20 years at this point. When it comes to Call of Duty being out there, and I'm not really sure how long it's been an annualized thing, but it's been a long time. Now with Cold War, I think it was starting to set in where I was starting to get a little bit bored of the gameplay. It was also using a different engine than what Modern Warfare was using, and so it was kind of like that disconnect between gameplay between Modern Warfare and Cold War. Now when we get to Vanguard, I at least wanted to give it a shot. So I put in about roughly 10 hours of gameplay over the open beta across PC and Xbox. I got to level 20 within the beta, and I capped a couple guns at the 30, and then a couple probably around the 10 mark. So not a ton in some of those other games. But let's go ahead and take a look at Xbox first, because I think this was kind of a colossal train wreck. For reference, I was using 4K 120 hertz TV. I had the Series X hooked directly into it. This was probably one of the most irritating experiences I've had with Call of Duty in I don't even know how long. It was a mess, to put it simply. I don't know what was going on, and especially when you're looking at a beta and you're having the game coming out here soon and you're not going to get a lot of these technical issues fixed in time. So this beta probably is going to be a good representation of what we're going to get at launch, as opposed to some of the things that they'll end up fixing. But the biggest thing I had on the Xbox version was there were graphical issues left, right, and center on this damn thing. It was a mess. You had graphical pop-in was notorious on it. You had stuff not loading properly. I kept getting these pixelated areas happening quite often. I actually saw it in Cold War quite often too, but you saw that quite a bit when it came to the Vanguard beta on Xbox. It just wasn't performing very well. Lighting was another issue. I was not a fan of that in any way, shape, or form. And there was something about the overall movement that felt kind of weird. It was almost as if you had input lag, and so you were doing things and then something would happen. So it was almost kind of like an underwater effect, but something was definitely off, and I'm not exactly sure what it was. It just didn't feel snappy like a Call of Duty, you know, should feel. The core experience of Call of Duty is the gunplay, and on Xbox, no, 100% no. Hard pass. I did play it a little bit on PlayStation when they ended up doing their beta, and I didn't run into this issue, but on Xbox, this was horrific. So firing your gun, yeah, man, just massive visual distortions, whether it was the smoke, you know, whether it's smoke from the gun itself or you had a smoke grenade out there. You also had different ammunition types. So like incendiary was man, that was just interesting. When you had particle effects going off, that was even worse. You had the God rays with the sun. I'm not even sure how that passed, but it made it into the game. You're also looking at different things like exclusive Ace. I ended up going into a lot of this in more detail, but when you were shooting at somebody, the person would actually visually distort at times. Didn't happen all the time. I didn't notice this on PC at all, but on the Xbox, it just no bueno. The other thing that was kind of interesting is, just like with the Cold War beta, there were no teams. And so because of that, everybody looked the exact same. So sometimes you would literally run past the enemy and not even know it. And then you'd be like, oh, there's this person here. Maybe I should shoot them. The other thing that was really interesting is that you could see name tags even in the open beta, although some of this was fixed, but not all of it, is you could still see them through destructible environments. You could still see them through various things like walls. I'm not even sure how that happened. And sometimes when you're firing some of these guns, especially the LMGs, because there's so much smoke coming from the barrel, you're kind of blind firing at that point and just hoping you're hitting the name tag. On the Xbox version of this game, I was not a fan at all. But let's jump into the PC a little bit of some of the things I didn't like on the PC side, because there were some things over there too. Okay, now getting into PC, I'm not exactly sure how this happened, but when I pulled up the GPU temp within the game itself, and then I put MSI's Afterburner on the right side, the temperatures didn't actually match. And I'm not even sure how this is actually possible, but sometimes in game my GPU temperature would read like 45 degrees, but an MSI is sitting at around 75 to 80 range. And it didn't happen all the time, but it was definitely not reading my GPU properly. So not exactly sure how that was going on, but be that as it may. Overall, I did have everything cranked up to maximum in the graphical settings, and I had my FOV at about 105 most of the time. So just as kind of a frame of reference, I'm running an RTX 3080. The same thing with the Xbox, except the PC was a little bit better, but you still had the overall distortion when you were firing. So sometimes you're getting in a gunfight and you can't even see what you're firing at. So that, you know, across any version I played, that was something that was readily apparent and really needs to be fixed. And that actually kind of ties into the lighting effects as well. You know, especially on the outdoor when you had the sun blinding you. I'm not exactly sure why that was there, but you know, you get blind as soon as you look up, and sometimes you'd have flinch hitting you and you're looking up and you're hosed. Just don't even bother. The TTK in this game is ridiculous. So the other thing I ended up running into a few times, I didn't run into this on Xbox, but on PC it happened quite often. I was playing both mouse and keyboard and controller because I wanted to test both of them out. And at times, the buttons on the controller would just stop working. No rhyme or reason. I'd have to restart the game totally. And so, for example, I would lose the ability to use my bumpers for some odd reason. Sometimes I lost the triggers. And on mouse and keyboard, the left mouse button would just stop working. No clue why this would happen. I went ahead and submitted tickets on these things, but those were kind of irritating. And on the PC side, this was specifically PC, the glide bomb, you'd be sitting there just, you know, scrolling, trying to get the thing to direct, and it wouldn't go anywhere. So that was interesting as well. Many of these things I'm sure will just end up getting ironed out, and they're probably just bugs, and they'll most likely be fixed by launch, but we'll see what happens there. The other thing is a big core tenet with Vanguard is the breakable objects, so like doors and walls and things of that nature, and then blind fire. The breakable doors and the walls, meh. I mean, most of the time it wasn't a big deal. It was kind of cool to see some of the areas of the environment start to get broken down by a lot of the gunfire, so that was actually kind of cool. And so it kind of got rid of a lot of potential cover. So it kind of reminded me of Battlefield in those senses, and I'll get into some of this stuff a little bit later, but that was kind of cool, but I didn't see a ton of value in it in the overall gameplay. And this also brings me right into the blind fire. I didn't see anybody really using it. And granted, it is a new mechanic and it might take a little bit to actually get people to adopt it, but within the beta, I didn't see anybody using it. I didn't get killed by it once, so just have to see how that goes over time. Let's take a look at some of the things I did enjoy, because it wasn't all doom and gloom, except maybe on the Xbox side. So what did I actually like about the Xbox version? Well, it looked pretty. I mean, honestly, that was pretty much it. I did not feel the Xbox version, and this is on an Xbox Series X and S, I tried it on both versions. It just did not feel like it was even remotely ready to be launched. Overall, it just wasn't in a good state, and hopefully they get a lot of this stuff corrected, but for the most part, it just did not feel good. And so if you're on the Xbox platform, I would wait to see how this thing launches and give it a little bit of patches to see how it comes out, but overall, I cannot recommend the Xbox version at this time. And that brings me to the things I liked about the PC, and this was my preferred way to play the open beta. Now, with this game, especially with an RTX 3080, this game looked fantastic. Now, it is running off a modified engine of the Modern Warfare, so take that as it may, but overall, it looked fantastic, and I was running this game at well over 120 frames per second, so it looked really smooth for the most part. The maps themselves were actually pretty good that we got to play in the beta. I really enjoyed the patrol type, especially when it's kind of like a hardpoint mode, but with patrol, that point moves around the map. And that was actually kind of a cool mechanic with this particular game, and it kept people from just camping one area. I do specifically wish that in the objective game modes, they actually gave you more points for actually playing the objective as opposed to just running around killing anything that moves. But I digress on that point because that hasn't happened in years. The other thing that was really cool about this game was that the movement felt really fluid, especially on the PC version as opposed to the Xbox version. It just felt right. I didn't run into any stutters, jitters, frame rate issues. I didn't run into any ping or packet loss for the most part. Slide canceling is not in Vanguard, at least at this point. So that was kind of, I had to take some time to get used to that. We'll just see if that actually comes back or not. But as of right now, it just didn't have slide canceling in there. As I mentioned, my ping for the most part in the open beta was fantastic. I was actually usually in the 20s and 30s for the most part, whereas when I'm playing Cold War, it's, oh good lord, it's like over 100 for some odd reason. The ping in this particular game was way better. I was connecting much better, and it allows you, especially in some of these gunfights where if you're watching a little bit earlier, it's really can be difficult to see the person that you're firing at in these gunfights. So, ping actually kind of helps in this case. Now, another thing I'm going to say that I really did like, and I'm going to go against the grain on most of the community on this one, is that I actually did enjoy the pick 10 system. I really hope, and this is a huge caveat to this, is that I hope it stays balanced. But this is something you're going to have to keep an eye on, because in previous Call of Duties, you had to mix and match with those 5 attachments or end up in Cold War using the gun perk to add more on there. But in this case, every gun gets 10 attachments, but there were trade-offs in there, so we'll see how those actually get balanced out. But overall, I really did enjoy the pick 10 system, and the perks themselves were just okay, nothing to really write home about. I'll have to wait and see how the game actually launches and start to see how people take those perks and really start to use them to see if it's something that's going to be, beneficial over time. But between the guns and the perks, it's just a waiting game. Now, coming at this from a dad's perspective, with so many games coming out over this holiday season, would I recommend, based upon the open beta and the impressions that I've had so far, would I recommend Call of Duty Vanguard? And having a 7-month-old and time for online games being in short supply for me right now, I wasn't excited for Vanguard before the open beta, to be candid. And this open beta really didn't sway me to think otherwise. So me personally, I'm still looking forward more to Halo and Battlefield 2042 at this point. The Halo tech preview is coming up over the next couple of weekends, so I'm really excited for those and to see Big Team Battle and see how they start to incorporate those. The Battlefield 2042 beta should be coming out here soon, especially since that game got pushed an extra month to give it a little more time in the oven. But ultimately, time will tell whether Vanguard ends up being a good multiplayer game or not. For me personally, I'm going to plant my flag, and I'm going to say, unfortunately, this is going to be one of the first Call of Duties in I don't even know how long that I'm just not going to play that much of. And like I said, Call of Duty, it's not you, it's me. I'll be checking out the Halo technical preview here over the next few weekends, so make sure to stay tuned for that content. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out my impressions of the last technical preview, and I'll see you out there.